All right, I think we're live. All right, so assuming that we're live, hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Android Design in Action. We don't have a theme or a topic this week or any set of redesigns today. What we'll be doing instead is having a hangout with a bunch of folks from the design community. I don't know if this is like, public and free to join. I mean, not free to join. If you're able to join, if you for some reason cannot join and you do want to join, just go to the Google Plus page for Android developers and leave a comment on this post, and we'll go ahead and invite you so that you can join. We're just going to have kind of like a Q&A general discussion type event today. Before we get started, let's do some quick introductions for folks that are already here. I'll start. So I'm Roman Nurek. I'm on our Android Developer Relations team at Google, and I'm one of the co-hosts of Android Design in Action.
Hey guys, Adam Kosh. I'm also one of the co-hosts on the show. Should we go over to London?
Yeah, so Nick Butcher here, another Android developer advocate, and I'm joined by
Chris Baines is also one of the DevRel for Android, but I'm guest this week. I don't usually come into this. Who else we got?
All right, should we head over to Marie?
Hi, I'm Marie. I'm Android designer since 4 years and now in Berlin as creative director for Novodo.
Awesome. And Johanni?
Hey guys, so I'm Johanni. I'm a developer, but I'm a design fan. I wrote a book, Smashing Android UI, and write a blog in AndroidUIPatterns.com, and I work for Snap TV.
Cool. All right. We also have, so DeAndre was here and then he left. Let's head over to Andreas. Andreas, do you want to introduce yourself, and or if you want, do you have any immediate questions you want to ask? Or not? Okay. Let's head over to DeAndre. How about you? How's it going, man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
DeAndre, sorry. I'm an Android developer and designer in San Francisco.
Cool, welcome, man. And we also have Lucas. Hey, Lucas, how's it going? You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear you just fine.
Okay, so I work for Mozilla. My day job is Mozilla, working on Firefox for Android. And I also created an app called Pattern. It's a wallpaper app. Got quite a few downloads on Google Play.
Yeah, it's been featured numerous times. Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's see who else is here. I think David Jones. We'll go ahead and unmute you, good sir, and Ron Elam. So if anybody hasn't introduced themselves and wants to, feel free. Otherwise, let's jump into the meat of today, which is kind of general discussion and Q&A. So, before we actually have a Google moderator page set up, we have a few questions in there, and we'll get to that, if there's time. But if anybody has any initial kind of points of discussion or topics they want to raise or questions that that you want other folks to provide their feedback on, please go ahead and ask. So, anybody want to kick things off with their own questions or points of discussion? No?
no one's got any questions. Perfectly satisfied.
I have a topic we can discuss, but I don't have any questions.
Yeah.
Sure. Jan, you want to go ahead and introduce the topic?
The up and side navigation, or the drawer navigation. It's great, right? But it's quite messy right now. So kind of we need to figure out how it should work, right? Because now even the Google applications work quite differently. Like Google Plus, you can't swipe on YouTube, you can swipe to bring the drawer navigation out and so on. I wonder if you guys have a kind of recommendation what you feel the interaction should be. Should you kind of reserve a bezel swipe for it, or should swipe always work? And my personal opinion about the icon is that it's the up icon, but I know you guys haven't. But let's see what's going to happen with that. But mostly about the interaction, like swiping and stuff. How you feel as you work.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we could probably talk about the navigation drawer. It'll probably take up some time. And that was actually the number one question the moderator. I think he got something like 20 votes. I actually I put together a little bit of not really documentation. It's the unofficial kind of recommendations from our team about what we've been recommending to folks, publicly as well as internally. And we could probably start with that. So let me just share that real quick, and then as you guys want to, talk about what your feelings are towards the subject, then feel free. So I'm going to screen share my tiny little guide on navigation drawers. Don't know if you guys can see that. You guys can see that?
Yep.
So the current guidelines are basically a drawer is a slide-out menu that allows users to switch between views of your app. And it's obviously exposed using the action bar's app icon with the up caret, and revealed by an edge swipe. And actually, in some cases, like the YouTube app, it's not really an edge swipe; it's a full screen swipe. I think that makes sense. When personally, my opinion is that it makes a lot of sense to do like a full screen swipe when there aren't competing gestures. Like for example, if you don't have swipe to dismiss. Actually, hold on, AJ just joined. Let me go and unmute AJ. Hey AJ, how's it going? So when you don't have swipe to dismiss, or you don't have other horizontal gestures, like for example a map as your primary content view, I think it makes sense to do like a full screen swipe because that's probably what people are trying to do anyway. That's just, again, it's really my opinion. And the current guidelines say edge swipe, and I'd say that by default you should probably just use the edge swipe. The other thing is that where is it? Is only suitable for the topmost level. So another thing that folks sometimes use drawers for, and hold on, let me unmute David since he joined. The other thing that people use drawers for is to kind of provide exposed global navigation throughout the app. Like for example, if I'm like in a detail screen, 3 levels deep somewhere, what if I want to expose global navigation? Let the user do a full kind of context switch. And sometimes folks use drawers for that, and I don't think that really fits in with how they're meant to be used on Android. But certainly, it's something that's become popularized. So the current guidelines don't really call for exposing drawers in deeper levels, but it's definitely something that we can explore. If you guys have, I guess, feedback or I guess arguments either way in this direction, feel free to speak up.
In my opinion, it's kind of dictated by the content somewhat. If you have a strong hierarchy to your content, then I feel like the up button should always take you up through that hierarchy of content, and it shouldn't be like exposing the drawer.
Yeah, it's fair. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on? Actually, this is one thing that I'd say is pretty common, right? I mean, is using the drawer for global access, and like using instead of the up icon or the up caret and the app icon, using kind of the 3 horizontal lines. And I know you guys can't really see who's talking because I'm sharing the Hangout screen, but something like that is a little more common on other platforms. And so that's definitely something that I think that we should try to standardize on at some point in the future. Actually, a little point about the 3 horizontal lines is somebody called that the hamburger icon, because it's basically 2 slices of 2 buns or whatever, and then a piece of a patty, a meat patty in between. But yeah, it's definitely like something that's been used throughout, and I think that users understand what it is, the 3 horizontal lines, but really kind of the current guidelines are for the app icon and the up caret. Well, let me just jump into some of the unofficial stuff before I take the screen off so you can see our faces again. So like the current guidelines say, only at the top level, the up icon or up caret and app icon. It should also not slide the action bar. So this is a point of contention. This is definitely something that is a little inconsistent right now across Google Apps. So the Google Plus app, for example, does slide the action bar out of the way to make room for the drawer. The YouTube app does not. We definitely recommend not sliding the action bar out of the way, and I think there's really 2 reasons for that. The first is that from a framework standpoint, from a development standpoint, it's actually kind of difficult to do that, and it kind of imposes extra effort and extra work to get that done. And some people say, in that case, let's just recreate the action bar. Let's just re-implement the action bar so that we can slide it out of the way. And that's not really something that you should be doing, because there's a lot of kind of nuances with how the action bar is implemented. So you should try to avoid implementing the action bar on your own. The other point is that the action bar is really kind of a core navigational anchor. It's really the number one structural component of an app, I'd say. And so moving that out of the way kind of slowly deteriorates this kind of relationship the user has with that action bar. Making sure that it's stable is very, very important. And if you start moving it out of the way and sliding it away and so on, they could potentially deteriorate the experience. So those are the 2 points that I'd say about sliding the action bar. And then, again, edge swipe or full swipe. And then the other thing that folks sometimes put into the action or into the navigation jar is things like settings and help. And we really don't recommend putting things like settings and help there, because that's where those are really meant to be in the action overflow. The action overflow is kind of those 3 vertical dots in the action bar that when you press them, you see kind of additional actions that you can take. And so settings, help, about, feedback, terms of service, privacy policy, things like that, those are really kind of overflow items. And so we feel that those should belong in an action overflow and not in the navigation jar. So these are kind of the kind of unofficial other items I'd add to our official guidelines. But certainly in terms of, let me just turn off the screen share there. In terms of where we're going with the guidelines, I think that there's definitely a lot that we can add to the current set of guidelines, and that's something that we'll be doing in the future. It's just a question of time and resources. So hopefully at some point we'll do that. Anybody have any other thoughts on the navigation jar? I just kind of did a big spiel and took a lot of time to talk about it, but if you have any thoughts, feel free to speak up.
Well, one quick thing I wanted to mention is how you said don't move the action bar out of the way. That kind of works in with how you also mentioned that settings, about, help should be in the overflow. I see a lot of people put those things in their drawer because they've slid across the action bar, and now the overflow is no longer accessible. So it's another good reason to keep the action bar in place, so that you can keep that overflow still accessible.
I think
go ahead.
Sorry, dude.
Go ahead.
Keep it to navigation option as well. I think because you have this extra real estate, people get tempted to dump all sorts of extra information in there, and I think that really waters down its power as a navigational tool. I tend to think of it as very similar to the spinner navigation, like you might see in Google Maps, for example. It's a similar thing, but if you have a larger list of items, it can become unwieldy in that spinner and harder to do. So I think the drawer can be a good alternative there, as well as not sacrificing some real estate. So don't be tempted to just chuck any old thing in there because you have some more space and another vertically scrolling container.
So I just wonder if you guys have had any chance to do any usability testing of kind of how users see the site navigation with context of back button. Because I know if you guys tried the Verge application, I don't know if they fixed it, but when it first launched, the site navigation actually was very difficult to use because it didn't make sense. When you backed, you actually ended up with different screens. I think a Google application is quite good, but I don't know if I'm just a special user or how users in general feel where the back should take you after you navigate it in the side menu.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the research we've done specifically around navigation jars. I'm sure that we've done some amount of research, but I don't really know the details. We definitely did research on, I know we did a whole bunch of research on the action bar and up icon, and that was kind of, that was a few years ago, I'd say maybe 2 years ago, we did a big study on that. But I think that a lot of our guidance is a result of direct user testing with that. But the navigation jar, I'm not really sure, what kind of formal testing we've done on it. So I don't really know how to answer that question.
I think a lot of the weirdness with back navigation falls out from whether or not you make it globally accessible as well. Because if you have applications such as, say, Spotify or something like that, which lets you get to the side drawer from anywhere, then you can build up these incredibly long back stacks, which gets quite complicated. Whereas if you do stick to the guidelines, the Romans unofficial guidelines of only making it available from top level navigation screens, then you don't get these very, very complex navigation stacks, and I think the back button becomes a lot clearer.
That's a fair point. Do you guys have any thoughts? I mean, this is since this is kind of like a discussion and Q&A. I don't want to just be spewing out recommendations from our team. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what's the right way to do it, or even like if you don't like the up icon, and this is definitely something that's been brought up before. If you don't like using the up icon or the up caret for this purpose, what are the things have you thought about and things like that. So this is not just for like official guidance. If you guys have thoughts, please do share.
Yeah, Ed Lee in the comments chimes in that the burger menu is getting quite common. Even Chrome uses the icon.
For the what?
I think Chrome uses that icon in. Is it on iOS?
Yes.
Oh, the hamburger icon. Yeah, they use that on the desktop, right? Basically for the overflow. I'd say it's a little different. You can't really compare two very distinct platforms. Like, I mean, if you look at the desktop platform versus Android, there are definitely different norms on each. So even the iconography, even the direction of like if there's like a search icon, where the handle is it to the left or to the right? Even little things like that. I mean, they can differ across platforms. So I'd say that it's more important, I'd say, to be consistent within Android rather than consistent across different platforms.
So yeah, it's not in Chrome. Sorry, it's on Google.com. If you go to Google.com on mobile, you get the burger.
Oh, yeah.
So that's I think what it's meaning.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mostly, if I see swiping navigations, I'm cleaning the concept. People sending me concepts and want the feedback from me, and I say mostly it's messy to put all the functionality in this menu and everything is fine. And if you have something like a shopping application, they do the whole functionality for a shopping basket and all this stuff in the slide menu. And then they want a secondary action bar to handle the functionalities for the shopping basket and all the stuff. And mostly, if you're cleaning up the navigation, the secondary action bar is gone. That's what I learned in the past.
Yeah, I mean, using the drawer as the main navigation, I use it as a last resource. I mean, if you don't have any other way to show visually on the app, the sections go there. But I think it's very, very easy to just throw everything in there and forget about it. And
yep.
I mean, it comes.
And it's not right.
It's not right because the users are not seeing it, and if the users have not seen, they're probably not going to remember that that it's there. So I think it's a trend. It's obviously a trend. A lot of people are using it, but
I don't think so. I think it's like, okay, we don't know how we build real mobile use cases, and then we put all in the menu and we have the whole system on Android.
But it is a trend, right? It's definitely a trend that that folks are doing it, and I think that it like AJ says, it's kind of it's becoming more and more like a default, and what it should be is really a last resort. And I think that there are 2 points I want to make there. The first is that sometimes there are drawers that have 3 items in the left, right? In the left pane, you swipe it open and there's 3 items there. Drawers are really just replacements for tabs in that case. So it's really just an alternative presentation of horizontal tabs at the top of the screen. And so at that point, why don't you just simply use tabs or use a spinner, something that's less heavyweight and more immediate, more immediately visible. And the other point I wanted to make is that this reminds me of one of the problems that we saw with the menu button, the original menu button on older devices. One of the problems was that people were putting core functionality into something that wasn't immediately visible, and something that wasn't immediately it wasn't immediately clear what functionality was available. And so you would press the menu button and hope that there's interesting stuff in there, hope that the thing that you're trying to do is in there. It wasn't immediately on screen. One of the reasons we actually came up with the action bar pattern was to put more fundamental actions and navigation on screen. And I think that with the drawer, we're seeing kind of the reverse of that. We're putting less and less stuff on screen for the purposes of making or optimizing the real estate for content. But I think that there's probably a better balance to be struck in a lot of cases between content and Chrome. You still want to show the key most important navigation in some way. As well as your content, but I'd say that what AJ says is right. I mean, it shouldn't be a default. It should really be kind of a last resort. If there's no other pattern that works really well, then the drawer may be a good option.
Because the product managers say we want catalog in our shopping application, we want a category view, we want all these stuff we want in this little small application. And then you have too much. They can't develop a mobile application with maybe 3 useful functionalities. That's the mobile case. That's the reason why we have mobile. I'm maybe in a store and I will order the shoes at home, delivery service. So one case, just ordering. And I think the messy point or the too much functionalities, it's a little bit Windows Explorer.
Yeah, I think it's really up to us as the designers to talk to folks like that and say, you really need to optimize around the core competencies and core best use cases of your app. Like, make sure that the 2 or 3 things that users are expecting to do with your app are really easy and straightforward. And if folks that are asking for these apps to be built say, but we need like 7, 8, 9 different functions, then I guess it's the job of the designers to say, given those 9 functions, how do we best present these not as functions but as flows and as kind of benefits to the user. So I'd say maybe it's our job to pare things down to the most important, and then put other things in, put other items like secondary functions into the overflow or into other navigational elements.
I agree.
I quite like it when an app has a tight focus and doesn't try to do everything. Like, why not launch a second app perhaps for a different thing?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or you have the tablet case, one application and more functionalities on a tablet.
That's fair.
That is true, actually. You've mentioned tablets, but it makes it easy to do a master detail flow on tablets, because you can show that sort of drawer by default on a tablet, and you have that same UI, so you can reuse everything. So it just makes it easier.
Yeah, again, YouTube does that really nicely as well. So it uses this kind of like responsive design. So when you have a certain amount of horizontal real estate, the drawer is open by default.
There are positives to it.
What I say in the past is, okay, other systems like iOS working really straight. They're working like step deeper in the application, and Android works a little bit more chaotic, but every time step very close to the user.
Marie, still there? I think Marie may have frozen.
She's frozen.
Okay, well, when she gets back, we'll let her finish that thought. But before we move on, we have 5 minutes left. Does anybody else have any
moderator questions? Or
Yeah, we should probably jump into the moderator. When Marie returns, she can finish her thought. Before I jump into the moderator, does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up?
Can I talk about the quick return bar? There's
Go ahead.
pattern that you presented in the code, and I shared one that does an implementation like in Google Plus where it's on the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, Lars did one of those, right? Lars forked it.
Sorry, what is that?
Yeah, Lars forked your code, didn't he, Roman? What's his name?
Lars Vogel?
Berkman.
Oh, Lars Berkman, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I haven't seen it yet. So, DeAndre, do you have any? Did you want to make a point about its usefulness, or do you have any questions about it?
Yeah, I was curious. So there's a little bit of weirdness about scrolling up brings something from the bottom, but the advantage, of course, is that it's on the bottom, so it's a lot closer to your finger. Maybe if you're scrolling up, you just scroll up a little and it's right there. Whereas if you're like particularly on like a tablet or something, or if you scroll up and the thing's at the top, then it's really far away. So I was curious, like, what's the ideas about like, should it be on the top or bottom, or if it were just a weird pattern and at all?
Well, I think that the placement is generally probably better to put it at the top. It's a little more natural. I'd say that the Google Plus app in general, you know, when talking about things that Google Plus app does, it's a little more experimental on the UI side. They're definitely trying lots and lots of things. And you know, some of them work really well. Some of them are really just, you know, experiments that they'll pull out. So I wouldn't say that, you know, follow the Google Plus app, you know, by, you know, to the T as to what it does. But specifically in this case, I think one of the reasons that they moved it down is that it wasn't, like, the iconography that they were using wasn't as clear as it could be, and then they wanted to show text as well. And then at that point, you know, the bar itself became quite large, so it became just kind of a little bit of a burden at the very top of the screen, so they moved it to the bottom. But I don't think that that's really finalized. I don't really know if it's finalized, but certainly it's stuff that we're still exploring. But I'd say that by default, you should probably use you know, sticky bars at the top, unless it's really kind of following your scrolling gesture. So if you're scrolling down and you want to show something at the very bottom, like for example, you know, jump to the bottom. I don't know if this is very common, but you know, you're gonna jump to the top or jump to the bottom. If it's showing up in the direction you're scrolling, that probably makes sense. So if you're scrolling up, probably showing something at the top is better.
One exception to that I quite like is the Foursquare app does something quite nice where as you're scrolling down your feed, if you go back to the top, it actually pops up some kind of like filters at the bottom, which is actually quite a nice way of doing it. So it doesn't do it just with the general scrolling up, but just when you reach the very top, it pops in, which I quite like.
That's fair. Marie, did you want to finish your thought real quick?
Yeah. My network is not really stable today.
That's all right. We'll follow up over on Google Plus.
No problem. I see you can handle the topic very careful.
So let's see. And DeAndre, do you have any other questions on the quick return? I mean, it's not really a formalized pattern, the quick return. And actually, that name is just like something that me and Nick came up with. It's not really, you know, a formal thing, but certainly there's. I think in general, when there's something that's not documented in our official guidelines, we have a bug filed internally to make sure that it gets documented. It's just a question of time and resources. So at some point, we'll have probably some more guidance on quick return.
About resources. I have a question about resources.
Sure.
So mostly, I'm working for, in the past, now I'm employed by Novoda, but in the past I'm working for a lot of agencies, creative agencies. They doing something like catalog or shopping or tools or gadgets, for automotive, for sports, brands, all this stuff. And I try to show them how Android works. And big thanks to my friend Martin Tillicke, who take maybe 30 screenshots from ice cream sandwich, and I have now 30 screenshots with his private mail account and all the private stuff. But I use this stuff to show the UX and the designers, look how Android is today. And what I really need is maybe just screenshots from an actual system, an Nexus 4. I haven't a Nexus 4. I have just older phones. I prefer the older phones, actually, not just because they have keyboards.
I think AJ is signing in an agreement, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's really hard to find screenshots of the Nexus 10 resolution. You can find it. I can. There are no.
Or just how a system application looks.
Now, when XX HDPA comes in, you better guys have couple of screenshots for it.
I will say this: if you guys have, so if there are specific screenshots that you guys need, like I mean, it's it's obvious that we can't all buy every device. If you guys need certain screenshots at any point, just let us know publicly. We'll share publicly. I mean, we're more than happy to do that. And we have a bunch of test accounts, so I know that this isn't like an official resource, but it's definitely something that we can help with, in one-off cases. But certainly, we do plan on updating the design site with this kind of stuff. So it will. I don't know if it'll be full resolution, but certainly, we want to make sure that the design site is up to date so that you can share at least those screenshots, those kind of framed screenshots, with your product managers and clients and such.
Yeah, I'd always say, whenever I start working with a designer who's not worked with Android before, I always encourage them, if they can, get hold of a device and just get used to the patterns and so on. I know that might not be possible depending on your clients or whatever it is, but that's got to be the first best solution. If not, there's always the emulator, but
I can tell you from time to time I never get my device back.
I think we're losing our room, and I think we're a little over time. So let's stop there and continue. Sometime in the next few weeks, I think we should do more of these, and probably on deeper dives into specific subjects. But thanks everybody for joining, and definitely we have food for thought and more bugs to file in terms of more design resources to come out with. So again, thanks for joining, and we'll see you hopefully next week.
Good night, guys.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye.